Lucas was only 15 years old when everything fell apart. His mother, without explanation or goodbye, abandoned the family and was never seen again. The pain of loss brought Lucas and his father closer in the first few months, but as time went on, a chasm of silence and distance grew between the two. Now at 23, Lucas still lives in the same simple house with his father. They share the same roof, but nothing more than that. Meals are solitary, and they both spend most of their time locked away in their own worlds. When they cross paths in the house, they exchange nothing more than a distant good morning and go on their way. It was on a muggy summer day that this suffocating reality seemed to weigh heavier on Lucas's shoulders. While rummaging through the trash at the dump looking for items to sell, beads of sweat dripped down his forehead. The scorching heat made the air unbreathable. Lucas felt that place reflected his own life, a pile of old and discarded things. It was then, amid the metallic clattering and glass, that Lucas heard a weak yet desperate sound that caught his attention. It seemed to come from behind a pile of black garbage bags. Lucas felt a pang in his chest. Something compelled him to investigate that sound. Before continuing, just take a quick look to see if you're subscribed to the channel. If you love dogs and enjoy hearing stories about them, you won't want to miss any videos. He walked slowly through the dump under the scorching sun, rummaging through bags and debris in search of recyclable materials to sell. His greatest desire was to abandon it all and fight for a better life. But this was all he had for that moment. Bottles, cans, cardboard, anything that could bring in a few coins was collected in the makeshift cart. Sweat dripped down his forehead as his thoughts wandered far away. Once again, he found himself thinking about the past, about how things had come to this point. But he quickly pushed those thoughts aside. After all, what good would it do to stir up old wounds? It was then, amid the noise, that he heard a weak and intermittent sound. It seemed to come from behind a pile of tied black bags. With hesitant steps, he approached the pile, trying to identify the source of the sound. As he got closer, the sound became clearer, like a stifled cry. He felt a tightness in his chest. There was something alive in there, and it was suffering. With trembling hands, he pulled one of the black bags closer and untied the tight, cowardly knot that held it shut. As soon as the bag opened, the strong smell and intense heat nearly made him pull back. But then he saw, curled up inside, was a dog in agony, extremely thin and visibly weak. The animal raised its eyes toward him. Its gaze was a mix of pleading, fear, and hope. Lucas felt a wave of compassion wash over him. He couldn't just walk away and leave that helpless creature to die there. Carefully, he wrapped the dog in his arms. The body was warm and frail. He could feel every bone under the wrinkled skin. "I'm going to get you out of here," he whispered, more to himself than to the animal. Slowly, he stood up with the dog in his arms and headed out of the dump. Each step home was a struggle against exhaustion and heat. His legs wobbled, but he kept pushing forward. The dog barely moved in his arms, only breathing heavily. At times, he thought about giving up, that the effort would be in vain. But all he had to do was look into the dog's eyes, and he found the strength to continue. The light faded as he left the dump behind. The shadows of the afternoon covered the shanties on the way home. Some people watched curiously as they saw the dog in his arms, while others didn't even notice his presence. None of that mattered. He was determined to save that life. Finally, he reached the door of his house, exhausted but relieved. He made his way through the darkness that filled the room. He looked once more into the dog's eyes and said, "You're going to be okay here." A new life would begin for both of them. Thank you for leaving your like on this video. It's great to know that you love dogs and their touching stories. Lucas arrived home exhausted, with the weakened dog in his arms. The darkness had already taken over the rooms when he pushed open the creaky door and entered. His father was sitting in the armchair in the living room, as usual. Upon seeing Lucas, He shot him a questioning glance. When he noticed the curled-up thin dog in his arms, he frowned. "What is that?" he asked gruffly. "I found this abandoned dog at the dump, Dad. He's very weak. I couldn't leave him to die there," Lucas explained. The father let out an exasperated sigh. "That's just one more mouth to feed. We barely have enough for ourselves. You should have left him there." The harsh words hit Lucas like a punch in the stomach. For a moment, he seriously considered returning the animal to the dump. But looking again into those anguished eyes, he knew he couldn't give up. "I'm going to take care of him, Dad, even if it's just me." "He needs me," Lucas declared firmly. "I know what it's like to be abandoned, and I don't want that for this poor animal." Those words landed heavily in Lucas's father's throat. After all, he himself had been abandoned by his wife. What would the arrival of this dog mean for their lives? Without waiting for a response, Lucas took the dog to the kitchen. With an old blanket, he improvised a comfortable bed in a corner. Then he wet a cloth and gently moistened the animal's dry tongue, which drank the water drop by drop. The dog seemed grateful to finally be out of that suffocating bag. Lucas petted its muddy fur, whispering soothing words. Even in the face of his father's rejection, Lucas was determined to care for this new friend. He knew that recovery would be slow and difficult, but he wouldn't give up. He would find a way to save that fragile life. In the days following the rescue of the dog, Lucas juggled the exhausting work at the dump and caring for the animal at home without complaint. Even though he was tired from the heavy labor, he devoted himself entirely to the dog when he got home. During the day, he woke up earlier to prepare a nutritious mush made from food scraps for the dog. At night, he stayed by the animal's side, his sleep interrupted by its still fragile state. Lucas could barely sleep, waking at every little noise or movement from the dog to check if everything was okay. Lucas offered warm milk and soup carefully, watching to see if the dog could accept any food. Still very weak, the animal needed to be encouraged, drop by drop, to keep trying to eat. Patiently, Lucas brought the spoon to the dog's dry snout, insisting as he noticed its hesitation. In addition to feeding, there were also the bandage changes, cleaning the infected wounds to prevent worsening. Carefully, he removed the dirty bandages and applied a healing ointment he had gotten from a neighbor. Then he rewrapped the injured paws, trying not to cause any more pain. He constantly checked the dog's labored breathing, fearing a sudden decline. He placed his hand on the dog's chest to feel the irregular movements, also checking the color of the mucous membranes and the response of the pupils. Any change was a cause for concern. The exhaustion piled up, and the sleepless nights weighed on him. But Lucas persevered. With each small improvement, his chest filled with hope and satisfaction. Seeing the grateful look in the dog's eyes when receiving care gave Lucas a new purpose. He knew there was still a long way to go, but he was determined not to give up. The life of that fragile being was literally in his hands, and Lucas would do everything to save it. The tireless care represented much more than an act of compassion. It was also his chance for redemption. Sometimes, in moments of greatest exhaustion, Lucas wondered if all that effort would be worth it. But all he had to do was look into the dog's eyes and find renewed strength to continue fighting for its recovery. Even in the face of difficulties, Lucas felt a deep satisfaction in providing more comfort and well-being to the helpless animal. The bonds between them strengthened with each passing day. On a cold, early morning, Lucas was completely exhausted. Some things in life seem inexplicable. Just that night, he saw his father caring for the dog with patience. His father offered water and food to the animal with kind and affectionate words. What had happened for his father to change? Lucas was deeply touched to see this caring side of his father after so many years of distance between them. He realized that the dog in some way was bringing father and son closer together again. The helpless animal had awakened a side in his father that Lucas hadn't seen in a long time. Lucas reflected on how destiny brings us together in mysterious ways. The arrival of that abandoned dog was bringing healing and hope to their broken family. Everything happened so naturally that he could hardly believe it. That fragile little creature, which he had saved, was now saving his relationship with his father. Lucas felt his heart warm as he saw the tender look his father directed at the dog. How long had it been since he had seen that sparkle in his father's eyes? Now Lucas had more motivation than ever to care for the little creature. He knew that the dog needed them, just as they needed him. He watched silently, moved, as his father patiently cleaned and treated the animal's wounds. That rough man, who barely spoke to his son, was now showing a gentleness that Lucas didn't know. The simple gesture of affection on the dog's dirty fur spoke volumes. Lucas felt the barrier that separated them crumbling. The love for the defenseless animal was strengthening their family bonds once again. The scene touched Lucas deeply. He remembered the happy childhood he had with his father and realized that not everything was lost. There was still a chance to rebuild their relationship. The dog had brought hope where there had once been only darkness. As time passed, father and son began caring for the dog together, working as a team for its recovery. Slowly, the animal grew stronger. It could lift its head, wag its tail when it saw its rescuers, and even let out a few hoarse barks. Lucas and his father were overjoyed with each small progress. They realized that the dog was no longer on the brink of death. It was being reborn, just like their relationship. After much thought about suitable names, they decided to call the dog Chan. The name sounds like chance in another language, representing the second chance that everyone had received. Chan brought a lot of joy and unity to Lucas and his father after so many years of living like strangers. Now they had a common purpose, to care for that fragile little creature full of life. With each passing day, the dog grew stronger, even managing to take a few wobbly steps around the house, exploring everything with curious eyes and a sniffing nose. Lucas and his father watched this progress with pride and satisfaction. They knew that better days were ahead for all three of them. Together, they had turned their lives around. Chan barked excitedly when Lucas and his father came home from work. His once dirty and unkempt fur was now soft and shiny. His eyes sparkled with a new light. That helpless creature they had found, near death in the trash, now jumped and played like any healthy dog. Seeing this transformation filled their hearts with joy and hope. After dinner, the three of them settled in the modestly furnished living room, a scene that would have been impossible to imagine before. The father smoked while watching TV, while Lucas looked for ways to earn money with recyclables. Chan rested at their feet, occasionally letting out satisfied sighs. In those moments of quiet companionship, Lucas felt an inner peace long forgotten. He looked around and saw his simple father and the adopted dog, united by the affection they had nurtured. He felt that the family ties had finally been restored. It was an ordinary day when Lucas's father left his old motorcycle in the yard, preparing for when he would leave for work, and went inside to make lunch. Suddenly, a strange man invaded the yard and tried to start the motorcycle to steal it. Still, weak but alert, Chan noticed the commotion. He got up and ran towards the man, barking fiercely and loudly, surprising the thief. Startled by the aggressive reaction of the dog, the criminal abandoned the motorcycle and quickly fled the yard. Upon hearing the barking, Lucas's father rushed outside and saw the figure escaping. Then he looked at Chan, barking exhaustively, but proudly, and understood what had happened. Deeply moved by the dog's heroic act to protect their belongings, he petted Chan with gratitude. The father realized how much that fragile little animal cared for his new family. Chan had risked his own safety, still weak, to defend their home. The bond of loyalty and affection they had developed was genuine. When Lucas arrived and heard the story, he too was touched. Now, more than ever, he was sure that the dog was a gift in their lives. Besides bringing them together, Chan had given them new purposes, like caring for and protecting those they loved. That night, during dinner, the atmosphere was one of celebration. The father had prepared a special meal with the bones and scraps that Chan loved most. The dog was the center of attention, being spoiled and receiving more affection than ever. Although he still needed care, Chan showed his true personality that day. He was a determined survivor, full of life and ready to face any challenge for the family that had taken him in. His future looked bright. After the incident, the entire neighborhood began to appreciate and respect Chan more. Despite his weakened appearance, he had proven to be a fearless protector of their home. His bravery and loyalty inspired the local community. As the days went by, father and son had long conversations reflecting on their experience of rescuing and caring for Chan. Realizing how much everything had changed in their lives, they recognized that more than saving the dog, the new chance given to him had ended up rescuing their own relationship. Before Chan arrived, both of them led lonely lives under the same roof, emotionally distant, suffering in silence. The little animal, literally thrown in the trash on the brink of death, mirrored the abandonment that father and son felt. But his rescue united them in a common purpose. Caring for Chan required them to work together, and their compassionate instincts blossomed once again. With every improvement in the dog, their family bond grew stronger. He became the bridge between two shattered hearts. Now the once cold and empty home exuded warmth. The meals, which were once silent, became moments of connection. Even the challenges with some setbacks from Chan brought them closer together. Father and son came to understand that no being is irreparably lost, no matter how dire their situation may be. There is always a chance for redemption through care and love. This lesson forever changed the dynamics of their home. They began to appreciate the small joys of everyday life and each other's company more. They were grateful for having crossed paths with Chan and adopting him. He broke the cycle of isolation and gave new meaning to their lives. The focus now was on creating new bonds and sharing the lesson of compassion that Chan had brought them. Together, they dreamed of building a brighter future, transforming other lives just as theirs had been transformed. In the following months, Lucas and his father's home underwent a complete transformation. What was once a cold and lonely house now overflowed with life, joy, and affection. Everything revolved around Chan. The recovered dog ran from one side to the other, always celebrated when someone arrived or left. Meals became a sacred ritual, with Chan receiving his treats before eating. At night, he peacefully slept at the foot of Lucas's bed. Father and son established a routine of care and play with Chan, along with regular walks. These shared activities brought them even closer together. They talked, laughed, and enjoyed each other's company like never before. A barrier had been broken. In the yard, the father built a comfortable doghouse for Chan to rest in on warm days. Chan also loved to chase after the ball and bask in the sun. Delighted by the constant affection he received, neighbors who had barely greeted them before now stopped to pet and praise Chan. Impressed by the transformation, he had won everyone over with his lively and sweet personality. Emotionally, the father watched Lucas playing with Chan on the lawn. His shy and introspective boy had blossomed into a more confident and happy young man. The second chance given to the dog had saved the family. Lucas now had new perspectives for his future, knowing he was capable of making decisions that impacted the lives of everyone in his home. This experience had broadened his horizons, and the most important lesson: no one is irreparably lost, not until the very last breath. Thank you for watching the video until the end. Click on the card that's appearing on your screen and get ready to be amazed by what this pit bull did to protect his family in an extreme danger situation. You won't believe it, but Haj showed that true heroes can have 4 paws. It's an emotional story that will touch your heart and stay in your memory.